Hi, I'm Dr. Cheryl Lambert from Austin Peay State University. I am a professor there at Austin Peay. I also am the coordinator for the Center for Rural Education at Austin Peay. So I am very excited to be speaking with you today about our Rural Education Scholars Program. This is a pilot program supporting pre-service teaching candidates. So I'm sharing my screen with you today, and I wanted to take you through a PowerPoint that talks about our program and what we've been doing for the past year, and hopefully share our progress with you and let you get an idea of how this is working in our area. So we'll just move through the presentation. You're welcome to put any questions in the chat box, and we'll try to answer any questions that you have about the program, but thank you for being here. So as we move forward, our goals today are just to explore the pilot program. This program was funded by a TBR, Student Engagement, Retention, and Success Grant. It's intended to engage our teaching candidates at Austin Peay in targeted activities designed to strengthen their ability to teach in rural areas. So we also wanted to have an impact with influencing rural school students to pursue post-secondary education opportunities. And also we wanted to build collaboration with in-service teachers from rural schools. And so thanks to you guys for being here. We have a limited attendance right now, but I'm glad you're here. Good morning from Ball State. Hi, Cindy, and thanks to Josh for helping out organizing this event and helping me with technology issues. And again, just any questions that you have, drop them in the chat and we'll be sure that they get answered along the way. So again, this is my contact information, and I'll show you this again at the end. I am the coordinator for the Center of Rural Education. I'll tell you this, the center is fairly newly launched. It was launched in the spring of 2018. So we're still kind of getting our feet wet about everything that's going on with the Center of Rural Education. And yay, Austin Peay's here as well, well represented. Thank you, good to see you, Dr. Thompson. So this is our brochure and how we launched the center back in 2018. You see a message from our dean, Dr. Prentice Chandler is our dean, and he was very, very interested in getting this center launched so that we could support our rural schools and to help our candidates prepare to teach in rural schools. So we had this fourfold focus as we launched our Center for Rural Ed. So we wanted to start with collaboration pieces. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we started with that throughout this presentation. You'll hear about the collaboration pieces and also how we are training teachers. And this presentation deals mostly with that part of the center's work. And that is the pilot program supporting our pre-service teaching candidates called the Rural Education Scholars Program. So that was effected with this teacher training part. And then also we wanted to have an outreach segment and then definitely contribute to the research in rural education. So this is what it looks like. And you can see a map there at the bottom, really highlighting the rural counties that we wanted to address as we launched our center. Not to say that we aren't expanding into other counties in Tennessee, but this is actually where we started. And as you know, Montgomery County is up in the northern part of Middle Tennessee. And we noticed that those counties along the Tennessee River there were just not involved in some of the resources that the colleges offer, being that they are a good distance away from a lot of our colleges in Tennessee. So just to tell you a little bit about some of the challenges that rural schools face. So I want to look at different things that are addressed in the challenges. So the rural schools face a lot of challenges, such as low per capita income, higher per pupil costs, and you know these as you've done research in rural education. So you know that the poverty rates are higher, the populations decline, they have a lot of hard to staff positions in the rural schools, and they have trouble keeping teachers. So teacher turnover is high. And the families themselves are dealing with, single parent homes, geographic isolation, mobility to school, and resistance to innovation. So we know that the 20% of the nation's 2,000 poorest performing high schools are located in rural areas, and child poverty is higher. And you can see the stats there and the research. So Cindy, you're asking about the Rural Education Division and what division is it under. Our Center for Rural Education is actually under the purview of the College of Education at Austin Peay State University. So we are serving in coordination with the College of Education and with the support of Austin Peay, of course. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but if you have a follow-up question, go ahead and ask it. I'm going to move on through the other research that but it does shore up and build support for our programs that we're developing at Austin Peay out of the Center for Rural Ed. So you know that these are underrepresented populations. So the unique needs of rural education are often obscured by their rural and suburban counterparts, as you know. So one reason is that the majority of American students are educated in urban and suburban schools, which may lead policymakers to focus their attention and efforts on improving education where it will have the largest impact. So that does leave our rural schools most often underrepresented in those policymaking meetings. So we can't prepare ourselves to be effective educators for all students if we refuse to understand their lived experiences. Students in rural communities have special lived experiences that they are bringing to the classroom, and we need to be prepared to understand those in order to be more effective teachers in those areas. Responsive change for marginalized students can only occur when we acknowledge what happens outside of the classroom. So as you know, a lot of our students outside the classroom have many impacts on their daily life, and they bring those to the classroom. And we want to prepare our teaching candidates to actually serve those students, to build awareness of those students, and to help supply the needs that they have. So here's a map, again, showing those same areas where I mentioned before, where we wanted to focus our attention for the Rural Scholars Program. So we actually tried to find the students who were at Austin Peay from these counties that maybe they wanted to go back and teach in these counties. So very similar to all of the Grow Your Own programs that you're hearing a lot about, we wanted to find them, make sure that we support them for their college experience and increase that retention, and also to make sure that they're going back to their communities very prepared to teach in their communities. So as we move on, we again set the context for rural. And as you see, based on the 2010 consensus, 93% of Tennessee is actually rural. So the statistics tell us that some 70 of the 95 counties that you see there on the map had at least 50% of their residents living in the 38,000 square miles of rural Tennessee. Rural areas often have few service providers and resources for jobs, healthcare, and community services. And I've included the links to these resources. And as the conference shares this information with you, this PowerPoint presentation, you can access those. Also, you're welcome to contact me via email. I'm happy to send you the presentation if you have needs for these specific references. So again, the populations are underrepresented and overlooked. Currently, 49% of school districts in Tennessee are located in rural counties. That's almost half of our state that are located in rural counties and being served by rural schools. So we really need to look at that in our EPP, make sure that we're preparing our candidates to go into schools that are in rural areas. Just because we're located in an urban considered area, we want to make sure that we're still preparing these teachers to go and provide support to those rural schools as well. So I put a copy of our postcard for recruiting up here. So we developed this postcard with the help of the Austin Peay experts, and we present this to our mostly second, third year students at Austin Peay, getting them interested in teaching in a rural district. So are you interested in teaching in a rural district? These are distributed. It explains the program. We did have some criteria that we wanted the students to meet to be a part of our Rural Scholars Program. And then they simply submitted application, which was reviewed and then awarded. And because of this great grant from the TBR, we were able to provide a stipend for these students. And it was a good part of the grant. So what are the students going to do to receive this stipend and to work as a rural scholar? So that part was developed, and we continue to work on that part and to, let you know what was next coming up. So as we move on, and let's see if we can get, there we go. I wanted to show you a few pictures, so it'll pop up on your screen in just a second, but I was able to take one of our rural scholars to Louisville last fall, and she helped present a presentation at the Advanced Rural Education, a part of the NREA, the National Rural Education Association. So she was excited to do that. We were able to identify several scholars, and Mary Grace was the one that was able to go with me, and it was a good experience for her. She got to meet other rural educators, sit in on some sessions that she was very interested in, and then we presented some of our program goals in that session. So that was really exciting. It's important for our rural scholars to get these experiences, and they were going to have another experience in our spring conference that was supposed to happen back in March, but as we all know, everything went chaotic about that time. So we did actually have to cancel that conference, but they are planning to present at our virtual conference in the spring. So I'll just put in a plug for that later. But we met with the rural scholars. We decided on a program of work. We have a great space at our campus at Austin Peay where we can meet and do the good work of the rural scholars. So let me tell you a little bit about that good work so that you'll know what we've been doing. And I invite any ideas that you may have for our future rural scholars. So let me know if there's any ideas that you have that you want to share. But as we go through, I just want to tell you about the 2-day STEM workshop that was planned with our rural counties of Houston and Humphreys. They sent 30+ teachers to our campus to participate in a 2-day STEM workshop. And that was really exciting. I have some data from that to show you later. We were able to do surveys before and after to get an idea of what the teachers needed in the rural areas and what was important for them. So I did already tell you about attending and presenting at the National Forum to Advance Rural Ed in Louisville, and also about the prep for our own conference at Austin Peay. So we submitted a grant extension and thankfully received that so that we continue this work on into December. So we're really excited about that. We're going to shift to developing some media presentations instead of actually going into schools for that recruiting piece, and then also gather more surveys from students and teachers as we go along. So that helped support the professional development part of our Center for Rural Education initiative, meaning building collaboratives with those rural teachers to help support them. So in order to get that part started, you have to start discussions with the rural leaders. And sometimes, quite honestly, that can be a challenge. It's difficult sometimes to get your rural partners on board for fear of, they don't have a lot of funds to participate in things that would cost them extra money. Their teachers are very busy in the schools. For example, they may only have one content teacher for that grade area at the high school and just a few teachers per grade at the elementary level. So even sending a teacher to a professional development activity during the school year is really hard for our rural partners to do. So we're trying to find ways to meet their needs where they are. So they had needs for certain content areas when we talked with them. So for example, math was brought up and professional development for science teachers. So our first development wrapped around that science component. Actually, it was a whole STEM workshop. And they were able to come to campus and count that as PD with their school. And that's a big deal. If they can count that as professional development at their school, then, that adds to their professional development without taxing the rural school with anything extra that they have to deliver. So coming from a rural school teaching position myself and an administrative position, I fully understand the challenges that the rural schools have with professional development. So that was a big thing for me to be able to do as we started out in launching our relationships with the rural districts. So we want to continue those conversations with them and make sure that we're staying on top of things and the needs that they have. And I think everybody right now is just trying to keep their head above water when it comes to operating their school districts. So we want to be as non-intrusive to their time as possible. So that's why we're kind of shifting our initiative to be more some media delivered kind of things. But to tell you a little bit about the counties that we did serve with that first PD initiative, Houston and Humphreys counties have these student enrollment numbers. And when visiting with the district leaders, they identified their needs and we tried to address that. So we completed a SWOT analysis with them. And this is something that's done with a lot of district leaders to figure out their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, so that we have a better idea of where they want to go with professional development. University school partnerships offer vital connections to the rural communities and professors and other folks, admin level at our colleges. So building these infrastructures of support are very, very important, and developing the needs of whatever programs the rural schools are seeking. That's something we really wanted to do at the Center for Rural Education at Austin Peay. So this was a great opportunity for us, and we were very, very excited to launch that. That happened back at the very beginning of the school year this fall. So we were very excited to be able to do that for them and get everything ready. So some data that came out of that professional development activity, where what the teachers did was they like any other professional activity, really, they went from station to station, and we involved some of our own faculty at Austin Peay to help with some experiments, show them how to do things in their science classroom at a very low cost, and let them, build partnerships with each other and talk to each other about what their needs were in their classrooms. And here were some of the takeaways. So the quantitative data looked like this. The teachers liked the hands-on activities to perform in their classrooms and standard related information. So what did they want APSU to help with? Resources, more workshops. And they even mentioned you could come to our school and do a workshop. And then their challenges included a lack of materials or resources and meeting the standard requirements asked by the district and the state. So one thing that really emerged from this was we need help with the conversations, even between teachers and admin. So including administration in the professional development trainings is somewhere we really want to explore, because it doesn't help a lot if you get teachers supported, but then the administration's expecting something else of them. So actually educating all sides of the environment is the most helpful way to go. So we learned a lot from this experience, and we also recognize that with a need for support that they are seeking, then we want to be able to make sure that we can offer that. So also there's quantitative data attached to this presentation, this workshop. So some of the quantitative or qualitative data rather will be here on the screen. And I just took some quotes out of the presentations that where the participants voiced things, but also where they submitted their survey at the end. So some of these included the benefits of the course to engage continuously in professional development. It obviously did help them do that. They found inexpensive ways that they could implement STEM activities immediately in their classrooms. The benefits were understood, especially when they had no supplies. The rural schools really suffer and struggle to find supplies to teach with even. One teacher said, she's teaching a science class, but she doesn't even have a sink in her lab. So it makes it very difficult for her. So obviously 2 days of training is not enough. So that gives us incentive to try to come up with some more collaborative work with them. And again, they invited us to their schools and helped them talk with the administration. So we also did a corresponding workshop with one of the schools in Cheatham County pretty soon following this one. And it was kind of around the same thing, but it was one day during their PD time. And we split the day from ELA to STEM. So they actually had 2 different presentations for their teachers during that same day of PD. So there's a lot of different ways to work the professional development for teachers, and a lot of different ways for our rural scholars to participate. So again, they're attending conferences, they're creating media presentations and other resources for the teachers and for the high school seniors to promote post-secondary learning. And then here's a list on the screen for this slide of other opportunities that we're looking at for our rural scholars to participate in. So I don't know if you guys have any other ideas that would help continue the work, but if you'll be thinking about that as I kind of finish up the presentation, be thinking about some other ideas that would help support our rural scholars, help retention for our EPP students, help to build and meet those teacher shortages that the rural schools are experiencing. And there's just so many elements that could be addressed. So the pilot program here just addressed the one piece, being the rural scholars. But there's so much opportunity out there to work with our rural partners to help them better support their students and their teachers. So I think I've told you about all of those things on that slide, but if you have anything else to add, I would love for you to chime in, and any questions that you have. That's pretty much what our program looks like and how we're moving forward with the scholars and what we're planning to do from now until December, and hopefully way longer than that. But we want to make sure that we have a good foundation so that we're supporting these scholars and also scholars to come down the line. So we want to make sure the program is continued. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that. And if you have any ideas that you want to present, or if you heard of anything that might work, we are certainly open to hearing about any kind of strategies that would work in our rural areas to help support teachers and to help improve our program as well. So you got anything at Ball State that we could assist with? I know I was over there maybe in the spring, meeting with a group of students there in the foundations class. And that's a great opportunity also for our rural scholars to be involved in, is just to, go speak to early college students that may not know that they want to be teachers, or maybe they're early teachers. Continued funding. Yes, we are on a grant now. Fortunately, we have a very supportive administration, and we have very supportive leadership in our College of Ed. So some funding has come from the College of Ed. Also, we were able to secure a $2,500 grant from Walmart to help with our conference coming up. We have a couple of different areas that we're working on funding from. And as I say, we have a lot of support from the university looking for funding for us. And also, we're always seeking funding for our work. And it definitely does need to be supported. So depending on, how that support happens, the work's going to continue. Even with the workshop that we did, we pulled in our own APSU people that just actually honestly volunteered their time to do some of that. And sometimes that's what it takes when you're launching a program, is just getting all hands on deck and just organizing it. And it's kind of, if you build it, they will come. So we were going to do the workshop no matter what. And we were just really excited to have some funding for that, to be able to do more things. So something else that happened out of that we were able to do, and the scholars really helped with this, the organization of this and getting this done. And that was offering the visiting teachers opportunities to purchase kits of activity kits or experiment kits for their classroom. So we were able to allow them to choose some things they wanted. Because, we had a very diverse group of teachers. We had, kindergarten teachers and high school teachers, actually. So one set of resources, if we're trying to deliver that ourselves, is not going to help everybody. It's not going to be what everybody needs. So we let them choose. We had a couple of vendors that we purchased from, and we let them choose some supplies that would support them in their classrooms. So we were able to do that. And then, the rural scholars were happy to assist with any of that and to go out and, help them work with any of those activities. But that was one thing we were able to do that was really good. And, the more funding you get, the more you can do. So the virtual conference in the spring is obviously not going to cost as much money anywhere near what a face-to-face conference would cost. So, we're going to save some money there. Maybe eventually we can get back to a face-to-face conference. So that's kind of how the funding's working right now. We just probably pester people a lot to try to get more funding for the program to make sure that we're supporting our own teachers and the rural schools as well. Good question. Any more questions that you guys would like to ask? Okay, let's see. The Springfield campus. Yeah, the pandemic knocked everything out, right? Okay, well, I can do some exploring on that. Let's get together. Message me, email me. Let me get my information back on the screen for you, just so that you can email me. Yeah, I'm not really sure what they were planning to do for you guys at the Springfield campus, but we can definitely look into that. So I went back to my contact information so that you can send me an email, and we can look at what we can do for partnering. It's really challenging to get our scholars out to the schools. That's why we wanted to work with some media presentations that we could deliver. We look forward to the day when we can actually be there and talk with the teachers and the rural schools, and actually, come out to the community colleges and maybe make an impact there as well. Because, retention is important. We get them started, and, we want to show that, of course, Austin Peay is a great place to finish their education, to be teachers, and we don't want to lose any students along the way. I fear the teacher shortage is going to hit the rural areas even harder than other areas. So keeping the students that we have and influencing more students to pursue rural education and teaching in rural schools is just really important now. So we want to be sure that we build awareness with our students and with students in EPP programs to make sure that they are getting the support they need and the comfort they feel to go into rural areas if that's their passion, to actually support those schools too. So I think that the teacher shortage may hit them hard in the next few years. And we want to make sure that we're doing our part to make a difference in that. Okay, any other questions? You guys have been a great audience. Thank you so much. I'd love to hear from all of you. If you'll send me an email and let me know what's up in your area, I'll be glad to work with you in any capacity that you need. Thanks so very much. And I'll just, I guess, stop sharing my screen now, but we still have some time left in the presentation time. So if you want to actually ask any more questions, I can stick around or let you go and get ready for the next sessions as they appear. Any more questions? Thank you. You guys are great. Yes, Dr. Thompson, thanks so much. Thank you. Thanks to all of you.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me in this discussion on how trauma affects African American men in higher education. First of all, I just want to tell you who I am. My name is Willie Thomas. I have the privilege of serving as Assistant to the President for Equity and Inclusion at Cleveland State Community College. And let's get started. The purpose of this study is personal for me. One of the reasons why it's personal for me is my father, while preaching one Sunday evening, suffered a stroke. And my childhood memories are that of more of a caregiver than just being a kid. I wasn't able to attend high school due to various family dynamics. These experiences caused me to lose something important to me, and that was my confidence. I fought against the stigma of being a school dropout. Even though I obtained a GED, I always felt inadequate to attend college. I was not a great writer then, and often I would avoid assignments that required extensive reading, research, and writing. When it came to classes such as math, I came very close to dropping out of school, and because I was a first generation college student, I couldn't find anyone to relate, no one to care, and the last place I felt I belonged was in a classroom environment. My family was suffering, and coming home from school with no lights or running water was an unwanted normality, or it was just an unwanted experience through my first 2 years of going to college. Stereotype threat, low self efficacy, and poverty were factors that traumatized me, not just as a kid, but throughout college. These factors are what led me to want to withdraw several times, and I isolate myself in college discussions and sometimes participate in practices that risk successful academic achievement. But I can also tell you that I experienced the grace that's been granted to me by faith, hope, and love. And my adult life has been serving in higher education so I can be an advocate for students and individuals who are dealing with issues that are beyond the classroom. So let's talk about our learning objective. The objective is to improve African American men's learning outcomes by fostering discussions and policies in higher education and offering an understanding of methods that create a connection that facilitates academic success. So when we use the term trauma, there's broad ways that we can go, but I'm gonna really kind of fine tune it in these type of aspects. Okay, so when I'm using potential traumatic events, I'm talking about powerful events that intrude someone's life. These events are life threatening and possibly cause a significant threat to the presence of a person, both physically and psychologically. And trauma, I'm defining it as a range of events that overwhelms the individual's coping capacities, involves threats to severe injury or death to someone or someone close to the individual. And also, for the purpose of this study, we're going to also talk about racial trauma. Okay. And when I'm talking about racial trauma, I'm referring to the mental and emotional injury caused by encounters with racial bias, ethnic discrimination, racism, and hate crimes. So, as we get started, the question may be asked, where does this come from? All right. So, we're going to use another term called traumatic stressors. And traumatic stressors, I'm going to kind of define direct traumatic stressors. And these are a person experiencing a direct traumatic stressor. Or I say it this way, a direct traumatic stressor may be the victim of individuals physically or verbal attacks or may face other microaggressions. So this is something that's happened to an individual directly. Vicarious traumatic stressors are, for instance, this summer watching the uh, uh, police brutality of George Floyd and other aspects. Those are vicarious traumatic stressors where I may not have been directly victimized by it, but because I viewed it, because I can actually identify or put myself there, that has caused a traumatic stressor. And then we're going to also kind of tie into transmitted stressors. In other words, these are stressors that are handed down by generation. And what I mean by that, it can be various family dynamics, it can be social economics, poverty situations that are handed down through African Americans, through just through the generations of where they come from. All right. So let's talk about the trauma of the African American male. All right. Uh, for African American males, traumatic experiences are often shaped by victimization and perceived danger related to violence and abuse on race. And this is something that Carl Reed actually defined. These the perceived threats may be real or perceived threats of harm and injury caused by direct or indirect experiences, such as police brutality and other humiliating and shameful events. The aggressors may be people from different race and ethnic backgrounds, religious and faith-based organizations from different genders, among others. Howbeit, these events created a permanent memory and can have a long-lasting impact on their self-perception and other experiences. And this study goes on to say that these stressors often triggered with consistent reminders through social media of perceived threats. Social media and television can be a powerful tool. And social media and television that depicts painful reminders that can trigger strong emotions in often these African American students. It's worthwhile to note that not every African American watching incidents on television or social media is traumatized, but according to R.D. Daniels, some viewers develop phobias and a self-conscious that results in disengagement. Poverty conditions can also be a traumatic experience. The lack of food, living conditions, and even proper health care can be things that contributes to, for African American males, a traumatic experience. In a journal that was written by Burdick Will, he was questioning whether high crime rates had affected African American men in the classroom. And he argued that there was indeed a relationship between traumatic events and dysfunctional behavior in the class. In his study, he goes on to say that it's often expressed through emotional outbursts, acts of aggression, rage, and disconnection with the class within the classroom. Nevertheless, he said one of the struggles that takes place is a code of silence in the African American community. And let me speak to that. There is a code of silence within the African American culture in which people do not speak out about traumatic events, even when they're experienced. And as a result, there are some things that are transpiring, and even there may be some PTSD, post-traumatic stress, taking place that a lot of times go unknown or misunderstood or undiagnosed. Trauma and academic development. You know, trauma can be challenging for educators to address because students, particularly African American students, and I can speak on this being African American male, we do not express the distress that we are feeling in an easily recognizable way. And often African American students, particularly males, they mask their pain with behavior that is aggressive or off-putting. Studies have shown the effects of trauma have influenced African American decisions to even remain enrolled in college. In an article, Academic Achievement and College Persistence of African American Students by Boraz and Horn, that study found that African Americans who suffer from PSD symptoms while attending their first year of college were less likely to enroll in the senior year of college. The study also expressed to multiple traumas in childhood was associated with increased likelihood that Black and Black students, and I will be using Black and African American students interchangeably just because I just got started, the increased likelihood of dropping out of college. So in their study, they connected that children, African American children that were exposed to trauma, there was an increased likelihood of them dropping out of college. Academic development is a key aspect in most schools because it focuses on improving the potential of students. Academic development assists students in building competencies. It helps them socially, it helps them personally, and respect to their career. One of the things that this study argued was that academic development helps students establish healthy relationships and associate with a positive impact on learning and on students. They argued that despite challenges such as limited resources to schools, educators should remain committed to ensuring that academic development to help that there is academic development to help students with their learning process in and outside of the school setting. In another article that was done by Banyer and Cantor, they explored the reasons for this disparity as relates to why was African American men having an issue with actually transitioning through school. This is something profound that they found. They found um, that students arriving on campus with historical exposure to traumatic events, these same survivors became part of an at-risk population for further victimization. And a victimized student, their paradigm would not spend time in school relating to fellow students who had no history of the trauma. In other words, that often in their study, uh, African American males did not find a connection with other students that did not have similar experience or similar traumatized experience as they did. Whether that experience was through racial profiling, whether that experience was through poverty, whether that experience was just through various things that traumatized them early in life. Their self-esteem, and it goes on to conclude here, their self-esteem and the spirit of keeping on were killed. And this contribute to the reason for substantial dropouts. So let's talk about trauma and learning outcomes. In a qualitative study, the study of the color of success, and this was done by Woods Allen, he focused on variation between the performances of Black undergraduate students in Black colleges and universities and those who studied in colleges and universities with predominantly white student body. He focused on the impact of key issues related to college results among these two groups. And he compared the experience of Black students in different environments on the assumption that these students in predominantly white colleges and universities experienced unfriendly learning environments. This was what actually he found out. On predominantly white campuses, African American students faced the challenge of alienation, racial discrimination, sense of hostility, and limited integration. He found that on historical Black campuses, African American students tended to be more connected, accepted, and engaged, and to receive extensive support and encouragement. And he noted that the trauma that would traumatize the African American student on the predominantly white institutional universities was a term he called peer rejection. He stated that trauma and peer rejection are closely related. Therefore, students who face social rejection are highly likely to become traumatized. Now, let's talk a little bit, and it's really getting to really the meat of what I want to deal with, even from a personal standpoint. Trauma and stereotype threat. Now, stereotype threat may be a new word for some, and so I'm going to define it here. Robert Steele defines it this way: stereotype threat can lead to social inequity for groups such as ethnic minorities and women. According to Steele, stereotype threat is the state of being at risk of conforming as a self-feature to or trait in adverse stereotype about a person's social group. For instance, Black college students are more likely to perform poorly on certain tests, such as standardized ones, compared to white counterparts. However, in instances when race is not emphasized, the same Black students perform better or are equivalent in their to their white counterparts. And that was done by a study of comparison that Steele actually completed. It's interesting that his study stated that when one perceives themselves of terms of a membership of a salient group, that there is an increased likelihood that performance will be undermined due to concerns about the possibility of conforming negative stereotypes about that particular group. In this sense, stereotype threat can adversarially affect performance. Tongue got tied. Even as I was going through school, I was always be conscious of wrong answers, speaking out. There was stuff I wanted to say. There's stuff I wanted to ask. But there was like this phobia that I did not want to be that student. I did not want to be labeled as the dumbest person in the class. This study went on to study about how the traumatizing effects of racism often in the language of stereotype threat. See, within higher education, stereotype threat occurs when negative stereotypes about groups are evident. When students are in situations that can reinforce negative perceptions, whether standardized tests, whether it's classroom discussions, they experience anxiety that can be traumatic and have substantial negative impact on their academic performance. As a result, receiving education in a stereotype Latin classroom environment, young black men may exhibit disidentification, which is psychological disengagement from academic matters and pursuits. And as a protective mechanism against racism and stereotypes, they may just completely shut down. Now, as I'm dealing with the stereotype threat, this is something else that I want to talk on as it relates to African American trauma, because I know firsthand, particularly here in Tennessee, we've been blessed that we have a lot of initiatives that are looking to address issues with African American males and African American men. And often, the question is, why we don't have more participation? Why are they're not signing up to do this? We're offering these program assistance and no one's showing up. Well, there's something interesting about that. And in a study, a schism between injury and care, and these are the experiences of black male victims of violence. This is very interesting here. The research described the challenges of engaging black violent victims with support and care. Now, I'm gonna go on to talk about the violence, even on the classroom. I'm gonna tie it into it a second, but this is something that was very enlightening. It says a qualitative method was used to conduct 14 interviews with black males who were victims of gunshot and stab wounds. Researchers were highly surprised by the lack of engagement with social services that were attempting to provide support. All participants described an overwhelming sense of anger in the immediate aftermath of the injury. The authors used the word street culture to describe the response of silence and the mistrust among the victims. Additionally, all interviewees demonstrated a dominant culture of suspicion regarding authorities or healthcare professionals. The mistrust was justified by the close supervision of the police while receiving medical care for their injuries. It came as a surprise to the participants that healthcare personnel, ER doctors, ambulance, emergency workers allowed the police to interrogate them in the middle of receiving treatment. The questioning during medical treatment made some victims feel as if they were already perpetrators or guilty as such, and this heightened their vulnerability and lack of trust. This attests to the vulnerability mindset that African Americans struggle with in any environment that challenges them to accept help. In a study by Les Jacobs, his focus and his focus was kind of on the social studies aspect of it. The gentleman that actually did this article, he said that such as healthcare and counseling, stereotype threat is often branded inside young men's thinking concerning the classroom. Institutional mistrust does not stop at the source of perceived victimization. That mistrust involves not only enforcement, but also organizations, entities that perceive to cause oppression, including the workplace, social communities, and educational environments. The young men have to deal with that perceived threat that some do not want them there while even going through a admissions process or applying for financial aid. The ideologies of these statements have become powerful because it creates a reality in their minds before they even enter the classroom. I don't belong here, or nobody wants me here. Thus, relationships between faculty, professors, and administrators ought to begin at a place of mistrust as opposed to trust. In his study, Robert Woods examined why black men refuse to make contact with teachers, engage in small group discussion or activities, and attend faculty office or provide answers to classroom discussions. His study suggests that participants noted that they desired to fully engage but were apprehensive due to the fear of being perceived as stupid or dumb. And these variables are sometimes the barriers that many of you are facing when you're having to deal with these students. And this is one of the reasons why I just want to give uh, just an understanding of it. Um, and as a result, this impacts the students' motivation and the motivation that they need to actually focus on academic endeavors and to have academic confidence. Trauma and self-efficacy. And I really want to spend some significant time on this because I really believe this is one of the key aspects of, that's crucial to particular African American men being persistent and actually completing uh, school. And a lot of this is from my work firsthand that I've had been privileged and to serve, particular in inner city, in neighborhoods, in organization, in groups, that I can see the effects of the absence of this and how it affects the mindset, the paradigm, the goals, the pursuit of individuals, particular African American men. So, as we get started on this particular focus point of the discussion, I want to define what self-efficacy is. Albert Bandura, he defines self-efficacy as a person's belief in his or her capability to successfully perform a particular task. Together with the goals that people set, self-efficacy is one of the most powerful motivating predictors of how one can perform at almost any endeavor. A person's self-efficacy is a strong dominant of one's effort, persistence, and strategy, as well as one's subsequent training and job performance. Accumulative research and evidence supports positive links between students' academic efficacy and their achievements. In a study by Artino Jr. Called Self-Efficacy and Students of Color, that self-efficacy in various academic domains chose to engage in tasks that falls the development of their knowledge, skills, and abilities in those areas. It is important, and this is what I want to say, it's important to understand the dynamics of confidence in one's academic abilities when completing any type of study. The and these studies that all that I've listed have always found a positive connection between self-efficacy and academic preparedness. Using focus groups, Ihekawaba, he found that Black men and women perceived that confidence in academic performance potentially was a critical facilitator of persistence. He noted that students perceived a lack of confidence in their academic abilities as a hindrance to their achievement and persistence in community college. He also found that high self-efficacy allowed participants to embrace academic challenges, particularly when faculty doubted their abilities. And one of the things too that as we talk related to self-efficacy is this is self-efficacy is also it's what keeps you grounded when your environment is saying something contradicting what your dream is saying. It's the confidence that I'm where I should be. I'm doing what I should be doing as it relates to that. Going on with self-efficacy in a study called Black Male College Factors Affecting Their Persistence and Academic Success, Robert Wood examined the difference between personal goals of Black men and other men in community college. Wood argued that Black men are negatively portrayed in the media, for instance, as rapists, gangsters, drug dealers, womanizers, thugs, and these immoral characters of Black men present a false and dehumanizing narrative. And within higher education, the implication of these perceptions are often unconscious. The authors further assert that faculty, staff, and peers may hold stigmatized views of Black men that unknowingly communicate that they are not welcome or do not belong on a college campus. Wood also showed that Black men are motivated to succeed in college by the desire to create better futures for themselves and their family. Additionally, they had aspirations that include serving as role models to others and making their families proud, as well as a desire to disprove negative perceptions of Black men. The study explained African American need for self-confidence and motivation. Often, African American men battle a stereotype threat complex that portrays them in a dehumanizing manner that invites a conscious and an unconscious disregard for their well being. In this sense, Black men are committed to fighting stereotype threat. And this study that was done by Robert Wood expands on how trauma can trigger low self esteem among the victims. In another study, Lee and Leonard examined the interrelationship between behavioral, emotional, and cognitive aspects of school engagement. The finding from the study indicated that behavioral and emotional engagement were related biodirectly. School engagement are the intent to which students are involved in, attached, and committed to academic and social activities in school plays a prominent role in preventing academic failure and promoting confidence and influencing a wide range of successful outcomes. Academic achievement and learning outcomes have often been falsely attributed to intellectual focus and classroom engagement. But academic achievement involves the academic activities in which students participate and the amount of time that they spend in those activities. And that was just a breakdown on that. And I want to end the part of trauma and self-efficacy by saying this, that having an increased belief in the usefulness of one's education, program, and degree or coursework will lead to enhanced outcomes. You see, some Black men may be experiencing a conflict whereby their perceptions of the benefits of school conflict with their experiences, perceptions, and immediate needs like food and housing. But again, self-efficacy is what helps bring the grounded needed, the motivation needed to say, hey, I'm going to stand through the storms. I'm going to stand through the tide. A campus of affirmation. Many times we have students on our campus, African American male students. And when I use the term affirmation, I'm not talking about just a pat on the back. Oh, you just did good. We are having students come to our campus that have never been told or affirmed in anything. And I firmly believe that the same way words can bring somebody down, the same words that can demean and dehumanize someone, words can be used to build someone up. And I think one of the things in creating a more inclusive, creating a sense of belonging on our campus, particularly for young African American men, is you have to affirm them. And you affirm them by telling them opposite of the stereotypes, opposite of what may be portrayed in the media, opposite of what their experiences may have been. I would not have been where I am or been blessed to God where I've gotten if somebody would have talked to me where I was. In other words, I was just raw. I didn't even see potential. But no, somebody spoke. I like to use this phrase, to the king that's inside of me. And speaking to the king inside of me awoke me into a world that I could be something greater and beyond the environment in which I came from. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you again, Willie. I am checking the chat, and it does not look at this time that we have any questions.
All right. Well, I appreciate Tennessee Board of Regents, TBR, Wendy, Sean, Deanna, everyone that's helped put this on. Um, thank you all for giving uh, uh, Did you say the king? The king. Yes, the king. Karen Hudson, I meant the king. Speak to the king inside of me. Thank you all for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Willie.
All right. Bless. Yes, I will. Sean, I'll work out to make sure I can share these slides and talking points with you, and we can distribute them out. Oh, before I go, and I did not do this, you can email me directly at wthomas01 at clevelandstatecc.edu. That's wthomas01 at clevelandstatecc.edu. Thank you all so much. I just had a question. Wanda Franklin, absolutely. It's just my research has been more focused on the African American males. I'm sure, and there was a ton of information that include African American women as well. And so a lot of it did correlate by way of the same. So I just have not done as extensive research onto that aspect as I have for African American men. All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Sean. And I hope everyone have a blessed day. See you in the other sessions.
All right. Thank you again, Willie. And just as a reminder, we'll get those slides out to everybody and the recordings as well. So thank you guys again, and look forward to seeing you at the next session.
All right.
All right. Take care.